The time has come, and a bunch of stuff is coming right over the horizon. We're going to talk about that and more on today's episode of the Geek Watch Podcast.
This is the Geek Watch Podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petrie.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 216 of the Geek Watch Podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me, as always, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petrie.
Hello, Brian.
Well, both of us have just watched what I would call the first of a three-part season finale for X-Men 97. And we're going to talk about that. There's been a little bit of news, movie-wise, that I want to touch on first before we start raining praise on X-Men 97. We had been talking a little bit about Sony's Spider-Verse and Kraven the Hunter, and we were wondering how all that was going to pan out. Well, apparently it's been delayed again. It's going to be December 13th of this year. When you think about it, the original release date was January the 13th of last year. It's going to be pretty much delayed almost 2 years at this point. And I guess the question everybody's asking right now, is it ever going to come out?
Right.
I figure that it's going to. I don't see Sony shelving this and doing a Warner Brothers and going for the tax.
Right, with Batgirl.
Yeah. I think the main reason they're delaying it again is because I believe they're switching places with the Karate Kid movie.
Oh, okay.
Put that in the summer and then deal with Kraven toward the end of the year. The Christmas season is a viable release date. I mean, around Christmas time is... If you have a lot of faith in a movie and you're expecting big numbers, Christmas is usually a good time to open it. I don't know if that's what's going on here with Kraven the Hunter, but I would think that with this delay, if they had issues with the movie and thought that it wasn't quite up to snuff, they'd be doing some sort of reshoots, but they're not. So they must at least either be happy with the product or figure, well, there's not a whole lot more we can do for it. I don't know. And really, at this point, that's only speculation. Yeah. Not to say that doing reshoots is a bad thing, because Deadpool and Wolverine, they're getting ready to start reshoots.
What?
Yeah, I know. Now, normally that would be a big red flag. Back in the day, any movie that was doing reshoots, that was a problem. But with Marvel, and Kevin Feige said this a whole bunch of times, they schedule for reshoots.
Okay.
They just assume that the movie is going to do reshoots, and they schedule it in because they're willing to reshoot even like small things. Even if it's like for a tweak, they'll do reshoots. So I don't really feel like this is a warning shot at all. I feel like maybe they're thinking, well, we could make this maybe a little bit better. Or perhaps they were thinking at this point, well, we've been telling people we're going to drop some F-bombs. Maybe we should actually put some in. He said sarcastically, I'm sure there's plenty in there already. But I don't think that's a sign of concern. I'm not worried about it. Knowing that it's supposed to be coming out in July, it's like, wow, they're cutting it close, figuratively and literally, since they are having to re-edit it. But apparently they feel like there's something they can tweak in it, that they can make it better. And believe me, I'm not against them having a better movie. And the possibility is there might have been some 11th hour, somebody was like, man, this is so cool. I wish I could have a cameo in this. And they're like, you know what? Let's shoot a cameo. Let's shoot a cameo. Let's go ahead and put them in there.
Awesome.
So that's the possibility too. So I don't feel like that anybody needs to get scared and worried and go, oh my God, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? This can't be a good sign. Marvel, it's a little different animal. But as far as a big red flag movie, as red as a flag can get, Quentin Tarantino's last film, he scrapped everything and is going back to the drawing board. I
keep hearing, Quentin Tarantino, last film.
Well, he's been saying that for a while. I mean, he said that toward the beginning. And he was basically doing a film. It involved movie criticism and movie critics, and all of the complications and all the issues involved with that.
Okay.
And there was supposed to be some really interesting cameos, and Brad Pitt was going to be doing his character from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Leonardo DiCaprio was going to be reprising his role as well.
Yeah.
And we didn't know an awful lot about it, but Quentin basically just wadded up the script and said, I'm going to start over from scratch. I'm going to just, even to the point where he's not even going to go with that idea. He's just going to come up with another idea, apparently.
Okay.
So whatever the issue is with the film, it's apparently there was just something about it. He was like, this is not how I want to go out. He didn't really say why, but I suspect, and of course, obviously, he doesn't take any of my phone calls, and that's why I don't place any. I'm thinking it may have something to do with he may have read this script, and obviously he's got a lot of skin in the game when it comes to movie reviews since the 90s, obviously. We may have talked about this before, of course, is that everything terrible in art happened in the 90s. And I think we may even mention that we've talked about Ain't It Cool News and how a lot of the toxicity on the internet in general, but especially in movie reviews in particular, came from that website in the 90s. And so I'm sure Quentin Tarantino has a lot to say about the subject. Obviously, he knows a lot about it, but he may have looked at his script and thought, he wants to make a movie that's entertaining, not necessarily something just to give him a place to grind an axe. And it may have been a little bit too inside baseball. It might have been a little bit too far up his own ass, he might have thought, and went, I'm retiring after this, and I want to put out a movie that people are going to enjoy. I don't want it to just be my statement on why I think movie reviews suck. And he didn't want to go out like the old man shouting at the kids on his lawn.
Yeah.
I think that's...
Not go gentle into that good night, Quentin Tarantino. Give us another Kill Bill.
Yeah, friend of the show, Kevin Pauly, and I talked about this. A bunch of us were out Mexican food. So,
Yes, it's delicious.
Delicious Mexican food. And one of the things that he said, and I have to agree with, is that the massive thing that Quentin's going to have to deal with is that his last movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, was really, really good. And this last movie is supposed to be the coda to his filmmaking career. And how do you top Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Kill Bill 3. I don't know.
Well, Kill Bill 3, certainly you could write about Vernita Green's daughter going for revenge.
Yep.
And Zendaya would be good in that role, I really do feel.
Yeah.
Although she seems to be getting a lane now where it's like she's doing a lot of media, television, and movies where it's real horny.
Oh, yes. Yes, I've seen that. And
She's coming out in a movie now that people are talking about. It is a tennis film that involves a love triangle between her character and two male tennis players called Challengers, I believe.
Challengers.
And I'd heard somebody talk about how this is a shift in Hollywood because, of course, I remember the 80s when especially teenage films, they were pretty horny. And they also talked about how Gen Z, they really weren't into sex. Gen Z were very prudish to the point where you had to look back at boomers in the 50s and the 60s to have that level of, I don't want to see sex scenes in my movies. I'm not that interested in pursuing sexual relationships. And some people are looking at Challengers and other media as things are shifting and maybe people are wanting to have sex again.
Yeah, maybe. Like the AIDS scare was the big thing in the 80s. I remember they didn't want to bring Thinner out by Stephen King. Or Richard Bachman, because they equated it with the AIDS epidemic and the wasting disease of it. So that could have been a factor.
Yeah. Well, I think that it probably was a factor in a strange way because very often when you're being told there's something you can't have, suddenly you really, really want it more. And we definitely saw that in the 30s and the 40s with not just the very sexual nature of a lot of independent film, but also
didn't meet the Hays Code.
Yeah. Well, exactly. By doing these independent films, they didn't need to really worry about that stuff. And we talked about the Roughies. Those films were very popular. And I do feel as if a lot of our modern morals, our viewpoints on sexual relationships between people in general, plus the fact with COVID and social distancing and all of that, is that people have been saying no for so long that maybe this is a backlash to that. I don't know. I'm willing to see how things go, but it would be interesting to see how things are going to start to develop, especially now with everything else that's going on in Hollywood right now. That is really unprecedented. We are living in different times, just in the aspect on how movies are made and how movies are being greenlit, and the whole AI issue, which is getting more and more complicated as things are going on.
Yeah.
We could talk an entire podcast about the whole deal with Meta and AI and the issues going on there, where they're scrambling for data at this point and trying to get more data. I will tell you this is so I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but there was a website where you could look up your name if you were curious about, like if you're an artist, you wanted to look up and see if some art that you've posted online might be used to train art AI.
Ooh, weird.
Now, yeah. And for me, I was like, well, I don't draw, I don't paint. And so obviously none of my art is going to be used to train art AI. So I thought I'll just put my name in there. It'll be funny. And
Your poetry.
no.
Oh.
You ready for this? My author photo.
Oh.
My author photo that I've put online a bunch of times that I had done like about at this point, I'd say about 15 years ago. The classic author photo that I had done.
Goes on the book jacket. Yes.
It goes on the book jacket. Has been used to train AI art. So
Wow.
it doesn't matter if you don't draw or paint. If you've ever posted a picture of yourself online, it's very possible that, yeah, it's being used to train AI as well. I mean, that's how far it goes.
Yeah.
And I was reading this article on how Zuckerberg was really upset about how ChatGPT was beating out his version of AI. And the reason for that being was ChatGPT didn't really care if it was legal for them to use the text or the art. They didn't care. They were just grabbing everything. And so Zuckerberg's like, look, we have to figure a way of being able to put a positive spin on the fact that we need to steal a lot more than what we're doing. And that, to me, I was like, well, that is about as corporate as things get, isn't it? And it was to the point where they were talking about that in board meetings and staff meetings. They're like,
how do we spin this? How do we make this
we
sound
need
good?
to, it's like AI is starting to run out of data. They're running out of raw
How is
material.
that possible?
Data is limited ultimately, and it's even more limited if you try to play by the rules and only use material that's either public domain or Creative Commons, or you pay for permission to use it. And yeah, there are millions of terabytes worth of data out there to be had, but again, if you want to play by the rules, you can't use the vast majority of it. But even if you don't play by the rules, there's an end to it. There's only so much that's out there. And AI is this big ravenous beast that eats and eats and needs more and more.
Input.
Exactly. And
Johnny Five.
And so, yeah, they're getting to the place now where we need to keep feeding it, and we're running out of stuff to feed it. That, to me, is like really... It's funny. It's like we had this big devouring monster and it's running out of stuff to eat. But AI is doing so much more stuff now. I don't even know if you know about this. There's an AI website out there that will write songs for you.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Again, it's like you can tell, do me an emo song about this subject.
Oh.
And it'll do with vocals and the whole thing. It'll write the music.
Gospel hymn for the Flying Spaghetti Monster.
Yeah. Absolutely. You can tell it that. And if you've got certain lines you want to use in it, and if you want to do the lyrics and have it come up with music for it, it'll do that, depending on how detailed you want to be involved in the project. But yeah, you can go on a website and say, I want a gospel hymn for the Flying Spaghetti Monster done in the form of gospel rock, done as a church hymn, and it will rip out an MP3 file and it'll work. And it's crazy how good it is. It's like the next step now.
Yep. Welcome our robot overlords.
Well, here we go.
Here we go.
Here we go. Speaking of robot overlords,
Yes, speaking of robot overlords.
Let's talk about X-Men 97, part one of this, I guess we could say part one of the 3-part season finale.
Yep.
You saw it at
Yes.
lunch. I saw it this morning when I got up. I was like, oh, it's already on. Okay, well, I'll spend 30 minutes. We'll see how this is going to go because they'd set up a bunch of stuff.
Right?
How spoiler?
How spoilery are we going to get?
Yeah, how spoilery
how much
should we
do you
get?
want to do here?
Well, I'll say this. Let's just say that we're going to try not to be spoilery, but we
Okay.
might dip into that.
Here's the biggest spoiler: Spider-Man.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Biggest spoiler. There you go.
I love how they're bringing new stuff in. Now, I remember the old Spider-Man cartoon.
Yes.
And there was an episode where he met up with the X-Men. So it was done in
Okay.
that style of Spider-Man. But there was that crossover between the Spider-Man comic and the X-Men.
Excellent.
Spider-Man.
I remember it being on, but I mostly watched X-Men. I didn't watch Spider-Man as much. Now, Batman animated and Superman, I watched more of those, but I don't know. Maybe it was just when it was on. I can remember it, though.
Oh, yeah. I was always a big Spider-Man fan from when I was like a wee one. And the Spider-Man cartoon, the Fox cartoon, was amazing.
Yes.
I loved
All
it.
Fox cartoons. They
Yeah.
were just fantastic.
You had the Kingpin in it, who was a recurring character, and then they didn't do the Green Goblin, but they did the Hobgoblin.
Hobgoblin, yes.
They did the Hobgoblin, voiced by Mark Hamill. You could tell that the art was very similar to the cartoon. It was like, oh, that's awesome, because in the 90s, they had that continuity. They had that crossover, and getting a taste of it now was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But wow, this is really developed. And I think one thing we talked about last time was how with these sentinels, you had no idea, these organic sentinels, how bad could this get? And they went there right from the jump. They're like, it could be anybody. And
it was.
And it's probably everybody.
Man, was it. God, all the lines in this.
Oh, yeah.
I was sad, but I wasn't surprised.
Yeah.
It was just deja vu, and then we go on what we were doing. Oh, man, it's so good. It's good.
The thing about it is, we'll say this, because that was one of two things that really struck me about this episode was those lines, which described every school shooting or every black person who was killed by a cop. We've gotten to that point now.
Right.
And
the numbers on the arms to the collars and that parallel. I mean, we always knew it, but then, now we are just laying it out. We're not even being subtle anymore. We are throwing it in your face. It's beautiful.
And that moment where she says, Genosha was terrible, but we are so cynical. We're calloused. In a couple of days, we'll go to the next thing in the news cycle. And that's exactly what we're dealing with now. It was absolutely a mirror reflection of the stuff that we're dealing with. Something else that I found really fascinating about this was when Cable talks about this future that Bastion's trying to build. And to me, I found this extremely interesting because, of course, Morph makes this wonderful offhand joke. Oh, here we go, another dystopia that only Logan lives to see. But the future that he's creating, it is a utopia.
It looks beautiful. It looks wonderful.
Yeah.
On the outside, it looks great.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful place to live if you're a human being.
Right.
I found that interesting because it's really tempting as a storyteller that if you want people to understand that what you're putting out there is not good, then you want to make it look as bad as possible. Would want to put out this idea that Bastion gets what he wants and the world goes to hell and burnt out buildings and everybody's living in squalor and all of that. But by making the future something that is really positive and good, but not for everybody,
Right. Yeah.
that's a really powerful message. And it's a very challenging message because we all have these biases of, well, if it's good for me, it must be good for everybody.
Everyone. Oh, yeah.
But no, it's not.
Yeah,
And if it
that's the
isn't
worst.
good, and if it isn't good for everyone, just because it's good for you, that's not good enough.
Right.
I found it really interesting that not only was that a message in the show, but they were brave enough to tackle that kind of a message in that way. That they were willing to put out there, hey.
It's very Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
Very
Well, that
Starship
was the thing, is a lot of people who watch Starship Troopers, I noticed, didn't
They
understand.
don't get it, yeah.
They're cheering for the humans. It's like, you do understand they're the bad guys,
Humans are
right?
the bad guys.
And they're like, what? And
This is Man in the High Tower. This is
yeah,
the
it's
same story.
yeah, and it's like, well, how can you say that the humans are the bad guys? Well, Neil Patrick Harris comes out in a Nazi stormtrooper outfit, Where did you not get that?
Right.
It's like they didn't come to Earth. We invaded their planet.
And we don't know why. We're never given a reason why there are enemies. Why are we fighting these bugs? What did they do?
Yeah.
Out of nothing.
Obviously, it was like we wanted their planet, and so we were going to clear them out of there. So they're just bugs. And yeah, again, it's wonderful storytelling when you have in X-Men 97 the fact that they were willing to take a chance and not do a very heavy-handed message there, that they were willing to trust the audience enough to say, hey, let's give you something a little bit more real here, give you a little more meat there on the bone, something to talk about, something to think about. And for me, I feel like that's why this new X-Men cartoon it's why it shocked the heck out of me.
And we got the greatest meme.
Yeah. Yeah, they actually said it. And I did post this on my Facebook. It's where somebody had posted how it used to be we'd have anti-heroes, that they would become anti-heroes because they would become more good and you like them. But now we have anti-heroes like Magneto that become anti-heroes because it becomes harder and harder as we go along.
Disagree with them.
Disagree with what they're saying.
Yep. He's not wrong.
He's not.
Killmonger. He's not wrong.
Yeah. You may not agree with what they did or how they did it, but why they did it. And that's good villains, period.
Yeah.
If you can at least understand why they did it, even if you don't agree with how they did it, that's a great villain. And Magneto showing up on the North Pole and doing an EMP that just blacks out the...
Yeah. All of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Wolverine saying, I can't believe he did it. Yeah, it solved our problem? No. Declared war.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is what he did.
Yes.
And the thing about it is, it's like, you can't say, well, he shouldn't have done it. Because
he had no choice.
He really didn't have any choice with these biotechnical sentinels.
They're the good guys. And the mother, the rich mother, Roberto's, is it Roberto? Sorry.
Roberto's mother.
Forgive me, fans, but when she says, go with them, oh, my heart, it just, you have to go to this conversion camp. We got to get you fixed. Oh, wow.
That's the thing about it, too. And this shows you why Bastion as a villain is really smart. It's not a matter that he's doing brute force to kill mutants. These things were programmed to go, hey, there are moments when we need to be more diplomatic. And those Sentinels knew that. And they were able to play the political game. That's
We're
how
here to help.
Yeah, we're not here to destroy them. We're here to help them. And the fact that Bastion is that many steps ahead, has got the programming on these things running that deep that they can make those kind of decisions. That just shows you just how complex of a villain this character is.
That Sinister thinks he's playing him. They even threw in that Sinister, I knew Mangala.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
He said, I knew Mangala, and then you look over and you see the numbers on Magneto's arm. Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, such good storytelling. Man, I just keep going on about
Bastion
X-Men. I've always loved X-Men since I was a kid, and that just, yeah.
Well, the thing about it is, especially with Bastion, it's like you see what he had to deal with growing up, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I can get it. And then this son of a bitch turns his mother into a Sentinel. You're like, what the hell, man?
Man.
So it's...
Manchurian Candidate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I will say, of course, at the end, and this is going to be spoilery.
Spoiler, but we knew this was coming.
Yeah.
And we've all been waiting on it. We've all been waiting for that voice. Everyone's been waiting for this to happen.
And so we get Charles Xavier back on Earth. But before then, we get Bastion leaking footage of Xavier with the Shi'ar Empire, painting the narrative that the X-Men lied about Xavier being dead to build sympathy for themselves.
He's a turncoat. He's going to bring these aliens to us to make him the bad guy.
Yeah, it's like they knew he was alive the whole time. They just told people he was dead, so they would go, oh, we feel bad for you, and able to push their agenda. And now we have Charles Xavier is there, and you just know this next episode is going to open up with, okay, where the hell were you? Why did you make us think you were dead? And you're showing up now. Because the first thing he says was, I hope I'm not too late. I'm like, we could have used you a while ago.
Why'd they leave her up there? Yeah, it was it. It's going to be great.
Yeah,
I
so-
cannot wait. I cannot wait.
Yeah, for sure. It's not just, Charles Xavier's showing up. He's riding in the cavalry. Everybody's going to be like, yay, Charles. It's going to be really complex.
Yeah.
It's going to be a complex situation because he is dropping in the middle of literally a war that Magneto has started. And there are a lot of questions like the aforementioned, where the hell have you been this whole time?
Yep.
Were you never coming back? Are you only here now because all of this stuff is going on? Which, by the way, is the truth, because if it wasn't for Bastion and this war he's declared, Charles would still be with the Shi'ar Empire. He wouldn't have come back. I really feel like this is not going to be something they're going to brush off to the side. They're going to confront this, and I know Scott Summers has got a lot of damn questions.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like, especially with what's been going on over the course of this season, he's not going to be kind and gentle about it.
No.
He's going to call Charles out. We started out at the beginning that he wished that Charles Xavier had been there to help him understand how to be like a father figure. And in a sense, he's going to feel betrayed. And I think that's really going to develop the story, which is why I'm glad this
Did not need to hero worship him.
Yeah, which is why, honestly, I'm glad that this is a 3-parter, because if this was like part 1 and the next episode
But we
was
got a lot to work through.
Yeah, they've got to go through a heck of a lot more stuff. So we've got a couple more episodes left to talk about. And I'm definitely looking forward to that. But time flies when you're having fun. And not this coming Saturday, but next Saturday, we get the first 2 episodes of Doctor Who. Yes, it's already started. Can you believe it's already?
Man, no, I don't.
And
But of course, it is May 1st when we're recording this. Your clock is a day backwards, which is driving me crazy.
oh yeah, I've got
You got to fix that.
I do have to fix that. So it's already managed to arrive. We've got just a little bit over a week, and then we get the first 2 episodes of Doctor Who. What reminded me about this was Ncuti Gatwa and who plays Ruby Sunday? What's her name again? Millie Gibson.
Okay.
Millie Gibson. They were on Good Morning America.
Aw.
The Disney Plus money is getting them some
Man, Mickey knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he can certainly advertise, and they're running the rounds in the United States. Now, again, not to say that you have to be popular in the United States to be popular.
But it helps.
It definitely helps if they're helping to build a new audience. And there are some things that on the Doctor Who front that I do want to talk to you about. I don't want to really go into it today because I want to get a few things together and have us maybe a discussion next week to help kick off the new season, season 1 of Doctor Who. But it's right around the corner, and I'm already excited. But with that and what we're going to see toward the end of X-Men, I can't even imagine what to expect, but I guess we will see.
We shall see.
And with that said, we come to the end of episode 216. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. For Mandy Petrie, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the Geek Watchers out there, we're all geeky about something. Be proud of yours. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform and share this podcast on your social media. For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.